Welcome back to another Stay Connected podcast. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Carlos Brown. He's a renowned holistic performance golf coach who has made a significant impact on the sport. He's named one of Golf Digest's best teachers in the state and featured in Golf Magazine's top 100 teachers in America. Carlos has been shaping the future of golf with over 90 athletes securing college scholarships under his guidance, with partnerships like Nike and Callaway. Carlos is also a pioneer in adaptive golf, creating teams that break barriers and expand the game for all. So I'm excited to really get into it with Carlos today and share the knowledge.
Yeah, I'm happy to be on here, man, with you, and I'm just glad you have me on, man. I'm really excited about this.
Yes, thank you, man. I appreciate it. So, like I love to start all my podcasts, I want to know how you got started into the game of golf.
Yeah. So I got started. I was around 10 years old. My father introduced my younger sister and I to golf. He was into it, and he also um, read and listened to a lot of talk radio, and they talked about how golf was great for kids and expanding their minds and all that kind of stuff. And so he was like, so then he got my sister and I interested into it. And I played different sports growing up, but golf was the one thing that I felt like I couldn't beat. It always intrigued me because it kept my mind going. It was a constant challenge, right? It wasn't something that I could get bored of, and I actually had to work at it to be great at it versus just kind of half doing it and still being good enough, So it kept pushing me. So that's what really kind of got me.
Did you play competitively growing up?
Yeah, I did. I played competitively. Um, College-wise wasn't as great as I wanted to, which kind of helped shape my mindset on the competitive side. Especially when I was younger, dealing with a lot of depression that fed into me as an adult, and how that kind of affected my tournament play, especially with the type of person I was and how my thought process was. That's one of the biggest reasons why I teach the way I do, right?
Yeah.
Is to kind of help players who are like me, who may have had the skill set, but a lot of their mindset and how they thought and their thought process, nobody could kind of break through, and everything was very focused on, okay, get better on this golf skill end. But for me, it was more of the opposite end that kept me from, I believe, playing my best. So, that's what kind of led me to, I guess, my style of teaching right now. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to dive deeper into that because, I definitely feel like the mental side of the game, talk about it all the time. It's 80-90% of the game. And I'm glad you're touching on this because this is the type of conversations I love to have here on the podcast. You consider yourself a holistic performance golf coach. Could you give us kind of a context of understanding of what that truly means?
Sure. It's a total focus on golf internal to external focus. It's helping players discover um, who they are as a person and how it lines up with their goals or with their benchmarks, right? And what they're trying to accomplish. So it's not just about the skill side, which is important, but it's also about mind management, understanding how you respond to situations as a person, how you move and act, how you learn, um, how you need to practice based on who you are, right? Instead of just going, hey, let's work on a skill set, or talking a lot about let's throw things to the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
Sometimes, that has to happen, but when that's kind of the base or foundation of how you're teaching, it's never going to work, right?
Yeah.
Being able to have a clear understanding of a person, of a player, and of an athlete, then you're able to relay that message to them. If a coach can connect with me as a player and gain my trust, well, there's an open highway of knowledge that I'm ready to receive.
Yeah.
If I have these mental blocks and things and blocks and roadblocks in my mindset and how I feel about that coach, because I said it like this, when I meet players, they don't know me well enough to trust my opinion, right? To fully trust my opinion, right? So if we can start giving them facts and truth about things, it makes it so much easier to get that message to them, because changing changing habits is so hard, because we're talking, your habits are connected to who you are as a person. It's
Yeah,
changing your identity, right? And to change an identity is very difficult. So if I'm giving too many opinions on something, and something's very uncomfortable, I will not go through that, uncomfortableness for something I may not know, if I won't know if it works or not, right? But if
yeah.
I'm giving facts about how I learn things, or how my body moves and all this kind of stuff, it makes it so much easier to receive that message and go through the uncomfortableness of change, right?
Definitely, man. And it seems like what you're really doing is instilling these life values into these people through the game of golf. And that's honestly, personally, like what I really love about golf, how you can really dissect yourself as a person through how you approach the game. I'm
Right.
curious to know, because you mentioned that, it takes time and it takes facts to really get people to trust like what you have to say. What are some of the facts that you start with when to build trust with a potential client?
Sure. So, for starters, they take a learning preference test. Normally, it's a deeper dive for some of them that want to go even deeper with. So Colton, who is the neuroperformance coach for my brand, he has a great system that he's come up with to help about 200 questions. Normally, a surface kind of level introduction. I go through a smaller version of that. And if they want to go a little bit deeper, we go a little bit deeper. But it's a learning preference that helps me understand how they function and how they learn,
Yeah.
right? And it's their preference. So it's not me telling them how they do things. It's them telling me how they respond to things. But it
Mm,
also, what it does for me is it gives me an insight to how they think, how their mind works. Um, if they're a little bit more left hemisphere, left brain dominant, a little bit more analytical, a little bit more performance minded, and then that helps kind of shape the lessons and how I relay my messages to them, my instruction to them, or coaching. Um, and then they also go through like a physical kind of biomechanical, movement screening, and just trying to see how their body moves, how everything's, functions. So we can start off on the right foot. We can start off saying, hey, this is what we need to do. If I'm guessing how they learn and how they function, or how they choose to learn, then it makes it very difficult. Even if I do have the knowledge, right? It makes it very hard to start relaying the message to them. And through all that, I can help them too with their training, because
yeah.
when we talk about mental training and all that stuff, you know, we're always going to get upset. We're always going to be happy. We're always going to be angry. We're going to be sad at times, because those are just emotions that we have. But if we start understanding, how do we respond to these things? How do I respond to pressure? How do I respond to emotions? How do I respond to disappointment or to happiness? How do I need to practice and prepare for those things, right? Even everyday life, like you said. So golf is just one thing that we do throughout the day, right? But we respond to those situations, disappointments, and all that stuff the same way throughout the day. It's just some areas in our lives we can be more vocal about it, right?
Definitely, man. I mean, the second I started to look inward, and within myself, I started to discover how that was being reflected on the golf course, and how simple, a practice like meditation, just sitting still with your mind, and off the course, really, like, it helped my performance on the course. But it makes total sense what the process you utilize to truly understand, because everybody is different, everyone
Right,
responds differently, and it's you have no say on how things should be. And in my opinion, what makes a good coach is somebody that is able to understand the person on the other side well enough to be able to get them to where they want to get to. So on that point,
100%.
you've helped over 90 athletes, you said, earn their college scholarship, to get them from that high school to college level. I love working with these types of kids too. I think they're awesome. And my brother's like high school right now and getting into college, trying to find where to go. What's your approach with that specific type of client?
Sure. First off, will be again gathering information, right? We can never get enough information on what a person wants to do, how a person. So everybody assumes that going, say for example, playing D1 is the route, right? But there are players who want to use golf to get an education that sets them up for their future, whether it's being a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, a businessman or woman working in and are either working for a golf company or being a golf professional or whatever, right? But it's figuring out what is it that the player wants to do and wants to accomplish with golf, because then that helps guide their steps towards what college they want to go to. If you're trying to
Yeah,
look to play professional golf, well, you might want to go to a program that helps you do that, right? If
yeah,
you're not looking to play professional golf, but you do want to play collegiate golf, but you want to go to a school that is very good academically, well, we might be looking at a D3 school because it's a very, it's a high academic type of school, but you still want to
yeah,
play, right? And so it's figuring out what they want to do first and not assuming everybody wants. And some kids assume they need to play D1 because that's just what people tell them, right? But
yeah. Hundred
understanding
percent.
Right. But understanding the goal is to play collegiate golf, right? The goal is to be the best version of yourself you can be so you can accomplish whatever goal that is. And for most players, it's not playing professional golf like yourself. It's getting an education. It's using golf after you play collegiate golf to actually further your career, whatever that
Definitely.
is. So a lot of it is that first off is that and being realistic about what they need to do and their chances and all that kind of stuff, right? And then
Yeah,
next it's the work side of it from a physical side. What skills do they need, right?
yeah,
Where are they with their mindset? And then it's putting together a plan or a program of how they should practice based on how they function, how they learn, how they, perform their best. And normally, I always say this: how a person, like how you are successful in your life, is how you're going to be successful in golf. If you're successful with studying, or you're successful with in business, it's the same pattern with being successful in golf. It doesn't change, right?
yeah,
Because our process of retaining information and using information is kind of the same in whatever we do, right?
yeah,
If I'm the type to where I have to take time, say outside of golf, but in school, if I get the information, I have to really kind of study it and go over it again and again. And I may not get it in that session, but I do when I go home and I'm in a controlled environment and I can work on that. Well, that's what you're going to be with the golf. You may not see certain results on the range in a lesson because you're not even like that in life. So
yeah,
you may have to go home, rep it, be very intentional about it in a um, controlled environment, and then you go, okay, now let me use it. Now let me practice. Like let me trust it a little bit more, right? So it's figuring
yeah,
out how you are in that way, right? Instead of just
yeah.
assuming, everybody does think the same way. But
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head there. I feel like a lot of people kind of just assume that things should be a certain way, especially in this high school golf to college golf route.
right,
Assuming that okay, like if I want to play pro, I got to be in a Division 1 school, like I got to go down this route. And for me, like I played Division 1 golf. I only went for a year to UCF, but I realized that I didn't want to be in that environment. It didn't fit me. It wasn't my, environment. And I
right,
was, okay with that. I'm very grateful that I was aware of that and made a decision to leave and do my own thing. And
right.
I've realized that there's so many more opportunities that you can, capitalize on just by understanding who you are. Back to kind of
That's right,
the premise of everything. So
right.
I love that, man. I want to transition now a little bit into the adaptive golf world. We had Brandon
Sure.
Canisi on the podcast. He was like our fourth episode. The guests love that, and I'm wondering, how did you become involved in the adaptive golf space? Like, and what inspired the creation of the Callaway and Nike adaptive teams?
Right. Me becoming an MPT in 2016, after I did, uh, the golf world really stepped up to help me out, whether it's Golf Digest, like Callaway actually paid for my first leg. Um,
Wow.
so I had a lot of love from the golf world, but there are a few guys from the golf community, and really they're the three guys who are on the Callaway adaptive team, our staff team. John Bell, Jonathan Snyder, uh, Tracy Rahman, they reached out to me individually, but they all at some point reached out to me and said, hey, you know, welcome to the adaptive world, and kind of things like that. And, because, my whole career and life in golf has been in an able bodied space, right? And even now, a lot of it is still mostly able bodied space. I felt like I wanted to contribute my way because everybody has their own way of contributing to whatever cause, whatever, thing that they're passionate about. And with me being an amputee, I have to give back to my community. And I just felt like the best way I could do it was bridge the gap with the connections and the sponsors and the people I have, and bridge the gap with, um, letting them know more about kind of being that day walker, like between two worlds, and,
Yeah.
letting them know, okay, this is what it's like on this world, and letting the able-bodied world know what it's like as an adaptive player through me, and just kind of connecting them with people who are really huge in the adaptive world. So one thing I felt like, man, there would be, I talked to Chip Brewer, the CEO for Callaway, that I would love for it to be some representation or even like a staffing um, program for adaptive players. And one of the coolest things he said, which is what I love so much about Callaway Golf, he said, because I just told him, hey, there's 2.1 million about 2.1 million amputees in the world, or in the United States, sorry, not in the world, in the United States, way more in the world. And there's other, like thousands of other different types of adaptive players in the world. And I would love for Callaway to just really support that, and I'm just saying that's a big market. And he said, it's not about it being the market. It's about because it's doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so he said, let's get it done. And
Yeah.
he, with along with other guys from Callaway, got the team started. Um, John Malinowski, who's a big person in to me in the Callaway world, but he's the head of that program and does a great job with taking care of everyone. Um, we're just so excited, with that. With the Nike, same thing with Nike. They're all about, you know, changing the game and bringing awareness to things, you know. So, Nike was a big part of just pushing it forward, and making sure that um, they did bring awareness to the players. And now with the changes that happen at Nike, that's kind of been put on hold for a minute. But the fact that they got it going, and the fact that they were really behind it, it meant a lot.
No, that's
you know
awesome. For these types of companies to really back that, I mean, that means a lot. I mean, it shows their character, their morals too. That's important. And I want to go back to 2016 when everything happened. I want to go into it just so that we can talk a little bit about your mindset during that period, what you had to go through. Very few people in the world like have gone through that. I'm curious because I want to know how that experience shaped your coaching philosophy and now how you're helping others.
yeah. I always tell people walking actually was the easiest part.
Wow.
My mindset and changing my mindset was harder than walking. Walking was really easy, but changing the person, your mindset and who you are was difficult, because a lot of that situation happened because I was depressed. I was dealing with depression. And, that's, to me, is a silent killer. It's a sleeping giant that it's not one thing that causes it. It's multiple things and years of buildup that, you reach that one breaking point that people see, but that wasn't the thing that caused it. Right. And it's
Yeah.
something that it's more, people are more aware of in the United States and in the sports world now, but people still don't really understand it, because when we talk about, especially men dealing with depression, it's so different. You know, that's something that most men don't want to talk about, and they don't want to address. And we use different things to numb ourselves from it, whether it's work, whether it's substance abuse, alcohol, whatever it is, right? We find other ways of dealing with it. Just speaking from a man's point of view, right? On
Yeah.
this. But it was a blessing, because you know, I couldn't run. I couldn't run away from it anymore. I couldn't go anywhere. Literally, like I was, I
Yeah.
was stuck.
Yeah.
God was like, "You got to deal with this now." you know, and so, it was very. I had to face it. I had to face that giant, right? Um, and so spending time with myself, praying, spending time with God, and trying to figure out the real me. And then even afterwards, just spending time with going to counseling and therapists, just figuring that out just definitely helped. Right.
Yeah.
But what it did too was help me realize um, who I was all along, and what my thought process was, and how I was very intrigued by how the mind worked. Um, I instinctively taught the way I did before I lost my leg, but because it felt so outside of the box and not the industry norm, I tend to I was I wouldn't say ashamed of it, but I just kind of hid it, like hid my, what I did, right? And I wasn't very vocal about how I taught or anything like that, and I taught more about the skill side of it, right? Because it's what everybody does in the golf industry. Um, but,
Yeah.
what this really did was, you know, it allowed me to be more bold and vocal about it, and also go, no, there's so many players, because it allowed me to look back on my career, on my playing career, on my teaching career, and go, wow, if I had somebody who approached me this way, then maybe I would have been an even better player, you know, um, than I was, or I would have performed
Definitely.
better. I still always had skill sets and hit the ball well, but I would have been a better performer, on the golf course. And then one thing I started thinking about too at that time was, the golf industry is highly focused on players who are very right hemisphere dominant. That's, it was a game where players, and then I started thinking about all the players I knew over my career who had good swings and hit the ball well, and they always struggled performance side and mentally, but nobody could really work with them. And then they would say, read a Bob Rotella book, read this and do this. But that wasn't really
Yeah.
getting to the issue of understanding who the person was. It was a very surface level approach, right? And
Yeah.
then even some mental coaches who were good didn't understand things from a golf point of view, like a golfer's point of view, and how to see it, And so I felt like kind of moving in both worlds and understanding how golfers work and think and train, it's a different kind of insight than somebody who's worked with multiple athletes doing different sports, right? Because our sport is very unique in ways,
Definitely.
right? So,
Yeah.
so yeah. So, this whole experience with, becoming an amputee, changed my mindset, helped me become stronger mentally, but also started to unlock new ideas and ways, to just really um, be unapologetic about who I was.
Yeah.
I feel like the more polarizing in a non-toxic way, but the more polarizing you are, you start attracting certain types of people. And my neuroperformance coach, Colton Peters, reached out to me, and we instantly clicked. Um, and he's a beast. This young man is a beast, and he's an amazing person. Has a lot of great ideas. So I want to give a big shout out to him on that. But just kind of coming together to really work on um, reaching the players in a different way, because we can only help them with their swing so much, right?
Yeah.
And I've done it even as a coach, to where you're constantly working with a player and their swing looks so much better and so good, but they're still making the same decisions. They still don't understand why they have this anxiety over shots. They still don't
Yeah.
understand, why they can't close the deal, right?
Yeah.
And coaches are ignoring that part of it and going to what they know, which is the skill side, which is understandable, but it's not helping their players in the long run, right?
Definitely. No, and thank you so much for sharing that. It's super inspiring what you got through, what you had to go through, and like how you overcame it and where you are now. Like that's amazing, man. Like good for you.
That's pretty.
And also, I mean, on that note, that's something that's definitely more needed in the golf world, and I can't feel like it can ever be enough. Like there
Right,
can't be enough coaches out there talking about this, because
right,
to me, I mean, this is what I really like focus on when I'm helping people in their game. Like it's on the I call it the mental side. We say it's the
right,
mental side, but it's really just it's how the game is played. It's six
right.
inches between your ears, and the way I see it, it's everything's energy, and energy starts with thought. And like, if you want to change any part of your swing, well, you have to change the way you think
That's
in
right,
order to change the way you move.
right.
So why are we not addressing that first more often?
100%,
We definitely need a
100%.
lot more of that. And back to the junior golf talk, because I'm super interested in this. I currently work with some junior golfers to help better their mindset. So I'm constantly looking for ways to learn and grow and help them evolve. What are some
Mhm.
of the biggest obstacles that you see with these types of kids as they're approaching trying to get better in the game of golf?
Unrealistic expectations. So it's
That's
it's
great.
it's expectations that they think they need to do, because whenever you're not around somebody who can give those expectations to them and tell them this is what you need to do, they're going off of what they think needs to happen. Well, they were saying like the if we played up to the average golfer's standards, we would shoot like 5 or 6 under,
Yeah,
right? Like just the mindset of what a player thinks they have to do,
that's
right?
so true. Yeah,
And so that's the number one thing for me is making sure they understand the expectation. Even when you break down and a kid say who hasn't broken 80 yet, a younger kid who hasn't broken 80 yet, and then you tell them, okay, what's par 72? So what's if you were to shoot a 78, how many over par? And then they think about it and they go, and I was like, how many bogeys is that? And in their mind, they think they have to shoot 2 under to shoot a 78. Just a mindset of how they, right. And
yeah,
it's not, it's about managing your game and managing, you know, uh, your shots and stuff like that. It's not about being perfect all the time. It's understanding that we play for pattern, not for perfect, right?
yeah. I love
And
that.
when we understand that the process for success or their process, then they stick with the process, right? Instead of, you know, they it's they carry so much weight emotionally and mentally. And some
Yeah,
of it is self inflicted, some of it is from the parents, some of it is from the coaches, some of it is, and if the coaches, the parents don't know, they're adding extra stuff on, because if they haven't competed or done any of that, sometimes they're they're adding extra weight, you know, because they
yeah,
think that's what they should do, and not knowing, and especially if they have a certain type of kid who is very quiet with what they do, and they're never vocal, well, that child is just continuing to carry that weight and carry that load. And when they get so tired that they want to drop that load and quit, people are surprised, and it's not. We have to be able to read between the lines. We have to be
Yeah.
able to look at the player and understand them, because as junior golfers, they can't articulate what they want, what they feel sometimes in that way, right? So we have to make sure that we can read them and ask the right questions, and also shield them from certain things, and then allow them to go through certain things. So it's to me, it's more of a coach's job to help with that, because you know a parent has to do that with their child in everyday life,
Yeah.
right? So we have to do that as coaches with that child in their golf life, you know.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things is expectations. The other thing I think is they're in the process of constantly they're in a journey of understanding themselves, especially whether if they're younger, going through puberty, or even when they're in high school, they're still trying to figure themselves out. So it's our job to help them with that, and to
Yeah.
also help them understand the potential they have, and how to reach their full potential. So it's a
Yeah.
constant guiding, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very delicate thing, because it's a tightrope balancing act, but
Yeah.
it's learning to use wisdom, is learning to equip yourself as a coach with with information to help them. I always tell
Definitely.
people, um, you know, coaches who make become a hero in somebody else's story will never produce successful players. We're not the hero in somebody else's story. We're the Morpheuses. We're the Frodos. Not the Frodos. We're the Sam Wise. We're the the
Yeah.
the the characters helping to assist them on their journey. Right? We're a part of
Definitely.
their team. We're not the star of their team.
Yeah.
And the more coaches try to be the star of a person's story, or a star of that person's team, you're doing more harm than good to that junior golfer.
100%, man. That's spot on. Because I remember, I mean, I joined the program at the Floridian Golf Club where Claude Harmon III was one of our coaches. And I had the privilege to be alongside him and a couple other, well renowned coaches. And the biggest thing they emphasized was like, you're just not good enough, like to be getting angry about these things, to be
Right,
treating yourself this way, like you're just not. And like most people on tour aren't good enough. Like I'm
right,
not saying that because like I'm trying to tell you you suck. It's just the reality of like where like things really are. It's like
right,
understanding those expectations. And
right,
like when you realize that, you start to play smart golf. Like you start to
right,
play like non-ego golf where you're
right,
trying to attack everything because you got to eat up the course, when in
right,
reality it's not how you really approach it to drive
right,
performance over a long period of time. So
right,
that's
right.
definitely
Well,
spot on.
and that's why I'm careful with language with players. Like, even when we talk about say course performance, I actually never use anything tied with emotion. So how somebody says, "Oh, he's being very conservative or aggressive with his shot." I don't tie emotion to that. It's either it's a shot you need or the shot you don't need. Why?
Yeah.
Because if I've told you for years that you're not aggressive enough, and then I put decisions on the course in an emotional, way, to where I go, okay, you're being conservative, you're being aggressive. What are you going to do if I told you you're never aggressive enough? You're going to start being aggressive with things, right? And
Yeah.
making decisions. He's like, oh, he told me I'm not aggressive enough. I'll show him, right? But if we go, okay, is this shot the shot we need? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. There doesn't need to be, for some players, there doesn't need to be an emotional attachment to it. It
Yeah.
needs to be a little black and white, because sometimes you have to go, okay, is that conservative? Maybe it is a conservative shot that we see, right? But with that player, is it a shot you need? Yes, that's a shot you need. Keep it at that. If you need to be
That's it.
aggressive, more
Yeah.
aggressive, is that the shot you need? Yes, I need to be more aggressive in my mind, but I don't, again, tie aggressive to it. It's just the shot that needs to happen,
Yeah.
right?
Definitely.
And so,
No, I love that approach, man. I love how you're approaching the whole thing. I mean, I feel like I've learned a ton just from asking you some of these questions, and I'm so grateful for what you've brought to the golf world, what you're continuing to bring, and I'm so excited to see the future unfold and how you're going to continue to impact the game of golf. So, thank you so much for taking the time on today's
no,
podcast.
no, thanks for having me, man. It was a pleasure and a blessing, man. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Stay connected, guys. See you on the next one.